Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute ultimate cosmic mystery, how our universe could have originated from an absolute yet actually existent nothingness. I know, it sounds like a total paradox, but it's actually a rigorously structured theory. We're going to be unpacking the work of João Carlos Holland de Barcelos and his truly fascinating concept of Jocaxian nothingness. You know the old saying, right? Something can't come from nothing. It's basically one of the oldest philosophical rules in the book. But today, we're going to challenge that premise by fundamentally deconstructing reality itself. Honestly, by the end of this explainer, you might just look at nothing as the most powerful something imaginable. Okay, let's kick this off with a little mental experiment. Picture our universe. First, we literally strip away all matter and energy and the fields they generate. Gone. Then we go even further and withdraw all the dark matter and dark energy. Finally, we completely suppress all physical laws and spatial dimensions. If we haven't forgotten anything, what exactly is left? What remains after that incredible subtraction is the fundamental question posed by our source material. What is Jocaxian nothingness? Well, what remains isn't the non-existent, but rather a minimal physical structure. It's the absolute blank slate of reality. Let's get precise for a second. Jocaxian nothingness, or JN for short, is a declared state of nature totally devoid of physical elements like space, matter, or energy. And on top of that, it's completely empty of any rules or laws whatsoever. It is the absolute simplest possible physical structure. It's really vital to remember that this is a state of nature itself, not a rule. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. There is a stark contrast between what we usually think of as nothing, which the author terms trivial nothingness, and Jocaxian nothingness. When most of us think of nothing, we imagine a void where nothing can exist or happen. But these are actually two vastly different concepts. Could that trivial nothingness be a more likely origin for everything? The answer is a resounding no. See, trivial nothingness actually hides a massive restrictive rule, which dictates that nothing can happen. Because it requires this super strict rule just to prevent fields, space, life, or laws from generating, it's highly restrictive. That makes it infinitely less likely to be the true, simple origin of the universe. Jocaxian nothingness, on the other hand, escapes that semantic trap entirely. It possesses absolutely zero rules, not even the rule that nothing can happen. It is completely 100% unconstrained. And that brings us to why JN is infinitely more logical than a purely non-existent nothingness. Think about it. Non-existent nothingness is an intrinsic contradiction. If something literally doesn't exist, it can't hold properties. But if it has the property of holding nothing, it must exist to hold that property in the first place. JN completely bypasses this contradiction because it is an existent nothingness. At this point, you're probably wondering, can an entirely empty state actually be considered a being or an existent entity? If it has zero matter and zero laws, does it truly exist? The answer is beautifully clear, yes. It absolutely is a being. Because it fulfills specific properties, specifically the absence of elements and laws, it exists as a receptor of those properties. It essentially acts as a minimal state of nature. In this framework, existing simply means properties are fulfilled within reality. Here's the absolute kicker. Because JN has no premises, no rules, and absolutely no laws to forbid events, it operates on a pure absolute logical tautology. Things may or may not happen. This isn't a rule being imposed on the nothingness. It's just an absolute logical truth that applies to a system without laws. Let's follow the logic here. In a system without premises, there is literally no law saying something cannot happen. And if there's no prohibition against an event occurring, then eventually, mathematically speaking, something may happen. This means totally unpredictable phenomena can occasionally occur straight out of the void. The theory gives these initial, totally unpredictable randomizations a fantastic name: schizocreations. Because they derive from absolute nothingness and are unbounded by any rules, they are completely unguided events just popping into our minimal, rule-free universe. If you could somehow watch them, they'd seem completely chaotic. Now, I know exactly what you might be thinking. This sounds like a wild philosophical leap. But hold on, because we actually have to look at quantum mechanics for a direct real-world anchor. This isn't just armchair philosophy. There is a very tangible comparison to reality as we observe it right now. Science has already confirmed that virtual particles spontaneously emerge from the quantum vacuum without any prior physical cause. This spontaneous creation of a particle and antiparticle pair acts as miniature, verified evidence that genuinely random creation, events happening without physical causes, is an established scientific fact. It gives incredible weight to the whole idea of schizocreations. So what exactly happens when a schizocreation pops off? Well, once a random event generates a physical element, or a physical law, the Jocaxian nothingness is no longer completely empty. It transforms. From that exact moment on, any future creations within that space must obey this newly generated rule. The completely free, unrestricted JN is no more. This kicks off a literally universe-building mechanism called the natural selection of laws. Imagine random laws just being sequentially generated over time. When a newly generated law conflicts with older laws, it must be obeyed, effectively killing or replacing the inconsistent older ones. Through this brutal natural selection, only a harmonious, compatible set of laws survives together. And this elegant little selection process perfectly answers a massive philosophical question. Why does our universe even follow logical rules in the first place? The evidence for Jan is our reality itself. Our logical universe is quite simply the surviving set of compatible laws that didn't contradict and destroy each other. Just to make sure we've got our terminology straight here, the universe is basically the grand set of absolutely everything that exists, which originally was the Jocaxian nothingness itself. Meanwhile, our specific cosmos, or bubble cosmos, is just one localized region. It's a single logical bubble that formed within the larger universe and is governed by its own surviving physical rules. All of this naturally raises a pretty obvious question, right? Does this pure Jocaxian nothingness still exist out there somewhere right now? Can we go find a patch of it in deep space? The short answer, no. Currently, Jan doesn't exist because our cosmos is already absolutely bathed in physical laws. To create Jan now, we'd have to somehow figure out how to eliminate all physical laws in a region, which seems impossible. However, it was the minimal state of the universe in the remote past, long before the Big Bang. If we pull in Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the right one, Jan looks incredibly strong. Because Jocaxian nothingness is the absolute simplest state of nature, having zero elements and zero laws, it is the most logical candidate for the origin of existence. It requires no prior cause, no creator, and no pre-existing materials to explain its presence. But wait, if schizocreations were happening, why aren't we just constantly being bombarded by new, random laws right now? Well, our logical cosmos was able to stabilize and persist only because some of those randomly generated surviving laws specifically restricted the chaotic generation of new ones. A law was born that effectively turned off the schizocreations. Which leaves us with this final, truly mind-bending thought to wrap up this explainer. Are we just living in one lucky, perfectly logical bubble cosmos? A cosmos stabilized by natural selection, born entirely from the absolute rule-free freedom of a pristine nothingness? It completely changes how you view empty space, doesn't it? Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning reality.